Plutarch, Life of Tiberius Gracchus. So we can start on page 156 at 3.1. The differences between them, then, were of this nature. But as regards bravery in the face of the enemy, just dealings with subject peoples, scrupulous fidelity in public office, and restraint in pleasurable indulgence, they were exactly alike. So this is comparing the two brothers, and there's a couple key points here that are important to our topic, and a very important one is when it says and restraint in pleasurable indulgence. So that is talking about their appetites and how they differ based off of who refrains from them and who falls for them. So as we continue, Tiberius, however, was 9 years older than his brother, and this set a different period for the political activity of each, and more than anything else, vitiated their undertakings. They did not rise to eminence at the same time, and so did not combine their powers into one. Such an united power would have proved irresistibly great. So Plutarch talks about how if they combined together in office, nothing would have happened to either of them. They would have been very successful as a duo. Tiberius then, as soon as he got past boyhood, was so widely known as to be thought worthy of a place among the priests called augurs, and this was due to his virtues rather than to his excellent birth, as was clearly shown by Appius Claudius. For Appius, who had been consul and censor, had been made dean of the Roman Senate, by virtue of his dignity, and in loftiness of spirit far surpassed his contemporaries. At a banquet of the augurs, addressed Tiberius with words of friendship, and asked him to become the husband of his daughter. So this passage shows how Tiberius is very popular with the people of Rome and the augurs because of how widely known and how developed he is as a government official. Continuing, Tiberius gladly accepted the invitation, and the betrothal was thus arranged. And when Appius returned home, from the doorway where he stood, he called his wife, and cried in a loud voice, "Anastasia, I've betrothed our Claudia." And Anastasia, in amazement, said, "Why so eager, or why so fast? If thou had only found Tiberius Gracchus for betrothal to her." So we can skip this next section and move to 4.4. The younger Tiberius, accordingly serving in Africa under the younger Scipio, who had married his sister, and sharing his commander's tent, soon learned to understand that commander's nature, which produced many great incentives towards the emulation of virtue and its imitation in action, and soon led all the young men in discipline and bravery. Yes, he was first to scale the enemy's wall, as Fanus says, who writes also that he himself scaled the wall with Tiberius, and shared in that exploit. While he remained with the army, Tiberius was the object of much goodwill, and on leaving it he was greatly missed. So Tiberius, this explains how Tiberius was a good leader to all the men who served under him, and they looked up to him dearly. We'll jump to 5.3 now. But the enemy declared that they had confidence in no Romans save only Tiberius, and ordered that he should be sent to them. They had this feeling towards the young man not only on his own account, for he was held in very high esteem by the Numantine soldiery, but also because they remembered his father Tiberius, who waged war against the Spaniards, and subdued many of them, but made a peace with the Numantines, to the observance of which, with integrity and justice, he always held the Roman people. So Tiberius was sent and held conference with the enemy, and after getting them to accept some conditions, and himself accepting others, effected a truce, and thereby manifestly saved the lives of 20,000 Roman citizens, besides attendants and camp followers. So this shows how Tiberius is good with negotiating, and he knows what he has to do to save the Roman people, and he puts them before himself. Jumping to 6.3 now. He took nothing, however, except the frankincense which he was wont to use in the public sacrifices, and after bidding them farewell with every expression of friendship, departed. So this shows how he doesn't take more than he needs, and he turned war into more or less a friendship with the enemy, and that shows how he has very good people skills and is good with negotiating and talking to people. When he came back to Rome, the whole transaction was blamed and denounced as a terrible disgrace to the city, although the relatives and friends of the soldiers, who formed a large part of the people, came flocking to Tiberius, imputing the disgrace in what had happened to his commander, but insisting that it was due to Tiberius that the lives of so many citizens had been saved. So this shows how the government blamed, or said that this was not a good thing, and that Tiberius should be blamed for losing what could have been Roman land, because of Imperial Rome. They wanted to conquer as much as they could and gain as much land as they could. But the people believed that this was a good thing because he saved so many soldiers that were family members and citizens of Rome. And this is important because now he has those trust of those people and will be able to use that to his advantage. So now we will jump to 7.3 for a little bit. So just the key line in 7.3 is, in the present affair, indeed, more than at any other time, the people showed their goodwill and affection towards Tiberius. So like I said before, now, like, Tiberius has the word of the people and is respected by the people, so he has them on his side. And like it says, he has their goodwill and affection. Now, we can jump to 8.1. So, of the territory which the Romans won in war from their neighbors, a part they sold, and a part they made common land, and assigned it for occupation to the poor, and they divided it among the citizens on payment of a small rent in the public treasury. And when the rich began to offer large rents and drove out the poor, and the law enacted forbidding the holding, a law was enacted forbidding the holding by one person of more than 500 acres of land. For a short time this enactment gave a check to the rapacity of the rich, and was assistance to the poor, who remained in their places on the land which they had rented and occupied the allotment which each had held from the outset. So this can be summed up by saying the poor get part of the land to farm, while the government sells the rest and sells the rest to the rich landowners. So, and then in 8.2, when it talks about the law that is put into place forbidding one person to hold more than 500 acres of land, this is talking about how the rich were given a capacity that couldn't be broken, so that this would limit them to how much land they could control and how much land they could own, so they couldn't dominate the poor and cause them to become indebted to them and to have to owe them something. But later on, the neighboring rich men by means of fictitious personages, transferred these rentals to themselves, and finally held most of the land openly in their names. Then the poor, who had been ejected from their land, no longer showed themselves eager for military service, and neglected the bringing up of children, so that soon all Italy was conscious of a dearth of free men, and was filled with gangs of foreign slaves, by whose aid the rich cultivated their estates, from which they had given away the from which they had driven away the free citizens. So this is talking the rich get their land back. So the poor stopped giving them and the city of the government of Rome what they want, and these mobs form, which is important because this shows how the rich, the imperialism of Rome, even though they had all this land, they didn't distribute it evenly, and there weren't great laws put into place that prohibited the rich people from dominating the poor and causing uprisings. Now, we'll be able to skip to 8.6 now. Others again say that a certain Spurius Potamus was to blame. He was of the same age as Tiberius, and a rival of his in reputation as an advocate. And when Tiberius came back from his campaign and found that his rival had far outstripped him in reputation and influence, and was an object of public admiration, he determined, as it would seem, to outdo him, by engaging in a bold political measure which would arouse great expectations among the people. So Tiberius falls for his appetite to be better than his opposition in government, which is important because it shows how, like I said before when they were comparing the brothers, he has desires and wants, and he falls for his appetite because he wants to be the best, and he wants the word and the affection of the people. Now, jumping about through 8.7. However, the energy and ambition of Tiberius were most of all kindled by the people themselves, who posted writings on porticos, house walls, and monuments, calling upon him to recover for the poor the public land. So the poor call upon Tiberius to get back their land that the rich now own, and so they want him to create a law and a reform that gives them their land back. He did not, however, draw up his law by himself, but took counsel with the citizens, who were foremost in virtue and reputation, among whom were Gracchus the Pontifex, Maximus, Macius Scalviona the jurist, who was then consul, and Appius Claudius his father-in-law. So Tiberius consults important citizens in Rome before he creates his reform to get their feedback to see if the people would enjoy his reform. Now we can skip down to 9.3. But although the rectification of the wrong was so considerate, the people were satisfied to let bygones be bygones if they could be secure from such wrong in the future. The men of wealth and substance, however, were led by their greed to hate the law. So the people of Rome were allowed Tiberius to basically get a do-over, while the rich people of Rome hated the law and sought to seek revenge and to oppose him in government. Now, skipping to 10.3. Incensed at this procedure, Tiberius withdrew his considerate law and introduced this time one which was more agreeable to the multitude and more severe against the wrongdoers. So, this law was more agreeable to the multitude, so it benefited the people while punishing the wrongdoers. So whoever did wrong were to be severely punished. And now 10.4. Almost every day, therefore, there were forensics contests between Tiberius and Octavius. So this is where we start to see the competition between Tiberius and his rivals for power. Down to 10.6. He also put his private seal upon the temple of Saturn in order that the casters might not take any money from his treasury or pay into it. And he made proclamation that a penalty would be imposed upon such praetors as disobeyed. So all the magistrates grew fearful and ceased performing their several functions. Thereupon the rich men of property put on the garb of mourning and went about the form in pitiful and lowly guise. But in secret they plotted against the life of Tiberius and tried to raise a band of assassins to take him off. So the men of property, here this means the rich landowners, plan to kill Tiberius because they don't like how he's helping the poor and while getting rid of their land. Now we can jump to. We'll be able to jump to 11.2. But the Senate in its session accomplished nothing, owing to the prevailing influence of the wealthy in its class, and therefore Tiberius resorted to a measure which was illegal and unseemly, the ejection of Octavius from his office. So the Senate accomplished nothing, and because Tiberius put in a law, and the Senate didn't agree with it, and it says owing to the prevailing influence of the wealthy class in it. So the rich landowners had great influence over the decision of if the law was to be passed or not. So to help Tiberius, he got rid of Octavius from his office. Now we will be able to jump to 12.1. Tiberius introduced a law depriving him of his tribuneship and summoned the citizens to cast their votes upon it at once. So this is pertaining to Octavius. So he introduces a law that will get rid of Octavius's tribuneship and has the citizens vote on it immediately. So he will have them vote immediately, so Octavius will be kicked out of, or have his tribuneship lost quicker. Alright, 12.3. But when he turned his gaze towards the men of wealth and substance who were standing in the body together, his awe of them, as it would seem, and his fear of ill repute among them, led him to take every risk with boldness and bid Tiberius do what he pleased. So Tiberius sees the men of wealth and substance, so the rich landowners. He sees them as, he looks at them and wants to show off to them. So he, in his public speech, he takes every risk with boldness. So he intends to show them he means what he says, and he will do what he says. So 12.4, and so the law was passed, and Tiberius ordered one of his freedmen, to drag Octavius from the rostra, for Tiberius used his freedmen as officers, and this made the sight of Octavius dragged along with contumely a more pitiful one. So Tiberius abuses his power and uses his freedmen as officers. So he uses them as his police force. So he has them drag Octavius out of the public while Tiberius is making his public speech away. And this leaves a message on the people. Right. It was it was with difficulty that Octavius was snatched away and safely rescued from the crowd, and a trusty servant of his who stood in front of his master and protected him had his eyes torn out against the protest of Tiberius, who, when he perceived what was going on, ran down with great haste to appease the tumult. So the mob, so based off of what Tiberius has put in the heads of the people, this mob attacks Octavius, and Octavius is only saved by one of his trusted men. So now we'll jump to 13.2. These measures were carried out by Tiberius quietly and without opposition, and besides, he procured the election of a tribune in the place of Octavius. The new tribune was not a man of rank or note, but a certain Mucius, a client of Tiberius. The aristocrats, however, who were vexed at these proceedings and feared the growing power of Tiberius, heaped insult upon him in the Senate. So with Octavius out of the running, Tiberius replaces him as a tribune, and the aristocrats, so the Senate the rich people in the Senate were upset, and they fear Tiberius's power because he has like I said before, he has the word and the affection of the people, of the majority. We'll jump to 14.1 now. And now Attalus Philometeor died, and Edumus of Pergamum brought to Rome the king's last will and testament, by which the Roman people was made his heir. At once Tiberius courted popular favor by bringing in a bill which provided that the money of King Attalus, when brought to Rome, should be given to the citizens who received a parcel of the public land to aid them in stocking and tilling their farms. So Tiberius gains the affection of the people because he gives them this money that was brought to Rome, and he gives it, instead of giving it to the rich to benefit the rich even more, he gives it to the poor to help them get out of their debt and out of their hardship, and to gain social class and economic status. Alright, so jumping a couple pages now, we'll move to 16.2. And in every way, at length, trying to maim the power of the Senate from motives of anger and contentiousness rather than from calculations of justice and the public good. And when, as voting was going on, the friends of Tiberius perceived that their opponents were getting the better of the contest, since all the people were not present. In the first place, they resorted to abuse of his fellow tribunes, and so protracted the time. Next, they dismissed the assembly and ordered that it should convene on the following day. Then Tiberius, going down into the forum, at first supplicated the citizens in a humble manner and with tears in his eyes. Next, he declared he was afraid of it, that his enemies would break into his house by night and kill him, and thereby so wrought upon his hearers that great numbers of them took up their station about his house and spent the night there on guard. So Tiberius is afraid that that his enemies will try and kill him because of how well he is doing in the polls, and he tells this to the people. And because the people are so fond of him, they take up guard at his house. So they defend his house for the night and stay on guard there the whole time. Now, 17.5. At the same time, also many of his friends on the Capitol came running to Tiberius with urgent appeals to hasten thither, since matters there were going well. And in fact, things turned out splendidly for Tiberius at first. As soon as he came into view, the crowd raised a friendly shout, and as he came up the hill, they gave him a cordial welcome and ranged themselves about him that no stranger might approach. So his 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 um his popularity with the people, or he keeps gaining popularity with the people, and he has his crowd. So they they basically clear the road for him and make a friendly path for him to get where he's going without any strangers being able to approach him. And so now we will jump to 20 point, or yeah, 20.1. This is said to have been the first sedition at Rome since the abolition of royal power, to end in bloodshed and the death of citizens. The rest, though neither trifling nor raised for trifling objects, were settled by mutual congressions, the nobles yielding from fear of the multitude, and the people out of respect for the Senate. And it was thought that even on this occasion Tiberius would have given way without difficulty, had persuasion been brought to bear upon him, and would have yielded still more easily if his assailants had not resorted to wounds and bloodshed. So this is, or Plutarch is talking about after the mob had, so a mob attacked Tiberius and um and killed him, and this was the big uprising against the majority. So the minority uprose against the majority because of its fear that the majority would have more power than the minority and overthrow them in government and in life and in economics. So they the minority take it into their own hands to kill Tiberius, and they succeed. And in 20.4, it says, Then Narcissa said to him, What then if Tiberius had ordered thee to set fire to the Capitol? Blasius at first replied that Tiberius would not have given such an order, but when the same question was put to him often by many persons, he said, If such a man as Tiberius had ordered such a thing, it would also have been right for me to do it, for Tiberius would not have given such an order if it had not been in the interest for the people. So, for the Senate to make it look like they did not kill Tiberius, they claim that Tiberius had ordered for a servant to light the Capitol on fire and to burn down as many buildings as possible, and the Tiberius's close followers do not believe it, and that is why they say Tiberius would not have given such an order if it had not been for the interest for the interest of the people. So Tiberius has so his followers believe that Tiberius would not have done anything if it wasn't for the people, and Tiberius always put the people before himself, and that is why he gained such popularity with the majority, and through his reforms of land and giving the people the money of the dead king, he gained their popularity. So he would have placed the people before himself in life. And to finish up, 21.5. And because in the second place, when Gaius and Fluvius asked him in an assembly of the people what he thought about the death of Tiberius, he made a reply which showed his dislike of the measures advocated by him. Consequently, the people began to interrupt him as he was speaking, a thing which they had never done before. And Scipio himself was therefore led on to abuse the people. Of these matters I've written circumstantially in my life of Scipio. So Scipio is asked about the death of Tiberius, and the people do not like his response, and this shows how how popular Tiberius was among the people, and how much Tiberius was loved by the people because of his reforms and because of what he did for them. And and so Tiberius was just loved by the people, and that's why he became so popular and so loved, and so he he gained power so quickly because of this, because he he looked for the the affection of the majority before the minority. But in the end, this got him killed because the minority um, had enough power that Tiberius was trying to take away to kill him, and to create a mob, and to to execute him, and this caused chaos with the people, because they knew who had killed him because of his oppositions in government, and this started the people to uprise against the minority, and that is why we see the the um the interruption of Scipio in in the Senate, that in it says a thing which they had never done before. So because of Tiberius's death and because of the responses they had been getting from the minority, the majority look to fight back and to have their say and to gain the power that Tiberius would want them to gain.